It's regarding Barry Ferguson, and the moment you think that he realised he's not going to get the Rangers job, which I thought was really interesting.
Well, look, do you know what? There's people saying that, he still sees himself as being in with a puncher's chance of landing his dream job, and it would be the dream job for him. But that's a distortion of the truth. It's not the case. Barry Ferguson has felt since losing at home to Hibs that he was very unlikely to be in contention to get the job. And he's I think he's come to terms with that over the period. He may be wrong, by the way. I mean, who's to say that he's right? If the American owners come in, they're up against it in terms of the timing for next season already. They may still turn around and say, look, could you carry this thing for the next year or whatever? It might still happen, but Barry Ferguson doesn't actively think that he's under consideration for the job, and to say so is just plainly wrong. And that's the fact, and it's been that way. So what was the Hibs game? The start of April. I think he's been sort of having to internalise it since then.
I mean, Andy, particularly if he beats Celtic again at Ibrox, I would say that he's got to be still being with a chance of getting the job.
Yeah, a chance. I mean, I think he's right. I mean, I think we wrote in the paper yesterday, we did in this morning's paper, the jury thing that we do in the paper. We were asked a similar question. I kind of agreed with Keith. I think he had to have done something remarkable, and I think in his case it was winning the Europa League, and that was always going to be a huge task for him. I think that's the only thing that is going to change perhaps perceptions around him, just the lack of experience he had. He had to come in and show that he was a remarkable candidate. But listen, I agree with Keith entirely. I've asked him enough times. I've sat at enough press conferences after games and tried to get out of him his thoughts on, taking the job on full time. And no point has he ever said, yes, I'm desperate for it. I want this job, as we've seen other caretaker managers do. So he's always insisted he was just there to end the season. His job was to come in and steady the ship and get the team through the end of the season when changes would be made. Listen, of course, he could have put himself in the conversation had things panned out differently. I don't think that's going to happen now. I certainly think there's a role from there if he wants it in terms of the coaching role. I think
he won't take that, Andy.
I agree. I've got no doubt that he won't want to play second fiddle to some other manager, but I think there's a role there. I think he can be useful. I think they need one thing that Rangers haven't had over the last number of years is somebody to set standards in terms of just what it means to play for this club and the attitude, the approach you need. I think that is the one thing that he can offer, whoever it is comes in. Fully agree with you that saying that he would be perfect for that fit and him wanting that role was two different things. I think he obviously hinted that last Thursday in Bilbao that if it isn't to be him, and again he wasn't one saying it would be him, that he'd be quite happy to go back to his ambassadorial role. So, but yeah, listen, if he gets a result against Celtic, listen, I think it would mean people would look back on his time in charge with a certain level of fondness. But listen, he was handed a nightmare challenge, frankly. He's a team that was already double digits behind Celtic, a squad that really isn't fit for purpose and injuries mounting up. And, to get some of the results he's had, he can look back on that with pride. But the reason why results haven't gone his way since he took over aren't the fault of Barry Ferguson. These are long-rooted, pre-existing issues that the club haven't been able to deal with for 3-4 years now. And, it looks like this summer, yet again, we're talking about rebuilds at Rangers, but this looks like, obviously, with the takeover coming in, it's going to be the biggest of the lot. You're talking about a new board, a new chairman, a new CEO, a new sporting director, new manager, possibly a raft of new players. It's whether or not even that's all going to be enough to get them to a competitive level for next season, that remains to be seen. But the one thing you can be guaranteed is that Rangers, how they look now, as long as this all goes through, and as obviously we've been reporting over the last few weeks, that we're still absolutely confident that it is going to go through, it's going to look entirely different come first day of the season in July.
Keith, before I bring you back in, we've got some comments coming in on this.
Uh-huh.
Plenty of comments, and if you're watching at home, you want to get involved, please do so. Rangers Easy OK says, love Fergie, always will, but he's not good enough to be our manager going forward. His subs in Bilbao were baffling. We were all over the place after that. Need a more experienced manager in the summer. Hoopsaholic says, Barry said judge mean results and failed to deliver. If he'd taken the 13-point deficit and halved it, he'd have given himself a chance. P. McLaughlin says Ferguson, McCann, Dodds would maybe be a good backroom team for McInnes or a Russell Martin. And Darren says Gerrard did set a standard again after he won the league and the board let him down. And I think we can very quickly see off the back of this the latest odds for the next permanent Rangers manager, which we've got here, guys. Steven Gerrard is the 8-13 favourite. Obviously, Russell Martin's in there as well. Barry Ferguson down at 8-1. I mean, look, a couple of people mentioning Gerrard here, Gerrard coming home. Steven Gerrard, would he? What do you guys make of that? I just don't A, see it happening, and B, would he be the right man?
He's done nothing since he left Ibrox, which would suggest that he's the right man. I think Celtic were going for 10 in a row that season when Gerrard won the league with Rangers, and Celtic imploded. And yes, you still need to give Rangers the credit for getting the job done. And certainly Steven Gerrard improved Rangers. But for me, look, do you know what? I've just said there that Barry Ferguson doesn't see himself as a kind of runner and rider now that it's coming on to the final furlong. But for me, he's probably everything that Rangers need in terms of, do they need to go down another path and another guy with another idea about how the future should look for Rangers? I actually think they need dragged back and restored. And I think the guys that are in there just now, because of their experience, because they know the standards, because they know what it took to make Rangers competitive in their own backyard, they're ideally placed to make those calls. They've seen the squad close up. They know exactly where the flaws are, and there are many. And they'll have their own ideas about how best to fix them. And we are moving fast towards the summer and the start of next season. And I think you've got guys in there right now that have very clear ideas about what's required over the course of the summer. So you don't go down that path. You bring in somebody else new to the whole thing, has to assess the squad first and foremost, has to bring back the same players that weren't good enough and haven't been good enough, and that the current management team realise and have identified as not being good enough. Well, somebody else will need to go through that process at that point. And then you need to start trying to move ones out and bring, more in, more reinforcements in. I just think, I think the American takeover is going to be good for Rangers in the long term. But in the here and the now of it, I think they've got a real summer of unrest and just so much on the plate. It's starting to look really difficult to envisage how you can bring somebody into this, sit them down and say, right, you need to start rocking now in terms of being ready and to be competitive against Celtic at the start of next season. I just think that the best chance of doing that might well be to stick with the guys that are already in there.